Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Side Effects. Now, I'm going to apologize beforehand if this review is too short or really incoherent, because this is one of those movies where I could either just sum up my feelings and it'll be sort of pointless because all I'd say is it's good or it's bad, and maybe I get the basics, but I won't really feel like I'm really reviewing it, or I'm going to try to explain all my feelings and come across as a rambling moron, because there is so much I could discuss with this movie. Now, you should know beforehand that I wasn't all that interested in seeing it. The trailers market it as some sort of erotic thriller, and believe it or not, I'm not the biggest fan of erotic thrillers. I'm no prude or anything. It's just those two genres, I just don't think they go really well together. The same thing with dramedies. I don't think comedy and drama goes very well together either. It's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me there. The only real reason I decided to give it a look is the only other movie opening this weekend was Identity Thief, and I cannot stand that one woman, what's her name, Melissa McCarthy. She was in Bridesmaids, and I hated that movie, and I thought she was the worst part of that movie. So, not my cup of tea. I figure I'll, at least with Side Effects, it might be good. It got really good reviews. So, I went and I watched the movie, and I was surprised at how interesting it was. I did think that this was a solid film. I left feeling that I had watched a really good movie, maybe even a great one, but then the more I thought about it, the more it started to crumble under its own weight. This is still a solid film, definitely, but I don't think it's as good as people are making it out to be. So let's just start with the story real quick. The main character is Emily. She's played by Rooney Mara. She's married to Martin, played by Channing Tatum. Now, Martin had been convicted of insider trading, and he's just getting out of prison, which he's been in for the past 4 years. So she's going through a lot of emotional stress from that, even though they seem to have a good relationship, and ultimately she attempts to kill herself. This brings her into contact with Dr. Banks, played by Jude Law. He becomes her psychiatrist and ultimately starts prescribing her on these different medications, and she hears about one that's supposed to be pretty revolutionary, that's supposed to work really well, and so he ends up putting her on that. But then she starts sleepwalking, and he thinks he should take her off of that now because that's a pretty messed up side effect. But she stresses that no, this is the first time that she's really started feeling happy, and yeah, you can definitely see that she's much more enthusiastic about everything. But then she ends up killing somebody. In this part, I'm going to have a little bit difficulty when it comes to spoiling. I usually explain everything that happens in the first act, and anything that occurs within the first 30 or 40 minutes I don't consider to be a spoiler, but for some reason all the other reviewers whose reviews I've read on this movie, they seem to treat it as this big mystery. But honestly, I could see it coming just from the trailers. The person she kills is, well, I'm going to warn you, stop this video now if you plan on seeing this in the immediate future and you really care, but the person she kills is her husband. The reason why I knew this was coming is because if you watch the trailers, Channing Tatum is present during most of the first half, but then once you realize that she ultimately is going to kill somebody, he's mysteriously absent. So I knew that was coming, but so from then on they had to find out, does this medication, does that give her a reasonable defense? Because I think that's part of the insanity clause or whatever, however that works. And then, if that's true, how is that going to reflect on this doctor who kept her on this medication knowing that this was already causing problems? And so that's the story. Let me talk about what I liked about this movie first. The acting is really, really good. This isn't a character understudy, but the actors have a lot of room to explore their characters, to have a lot of fun with them. The most impressive performance came from Rooney Mara, who I'd previously seen in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake. Even though this isn't as impressive as that movie was, that's because she was playing a much more, a very different role. So that was, I think, a more obviously impressive performance. Here, she's playing a more normal character, and the fact that she's able to do so much with that, I thought, was in a lot of ways even more impressive. One thing I like about her is that her performance is very ambiguous. You're not really sure what's going on in her head. She could completely explode any moment. She'll go from sad to happy to sad again within minutes, and it really does feel natural. And then there's also a possibility that maybe she's faking this. Maybe this was a premeditated murder, and I like how you can't really tell just by looking at her. You're constantly guessing what's on her mind. Jude Law also did really well. I used to hate Jude Law too. I remember liking him in the Talented Mr. Ripley, but then it seemed like after that he started picking real bland roles when he just seemed like a typical pretty boy. But then just recently it seems like he's been picking more interesting roles, and I've just been really impressed with him as of late. Even bad movies like Repo Man, I still thought he did really good in them. And here, one thing I thought that was strange is he does not look like a psychiatrist. Just he looks too rugged for me, but at the same time, his personality is so endearing that, yeah, I'd be willing to accept him as my doctor. That there's just something incredibly likable about him. But once again, as the story goes on and you learn more about him, maybe this guy is a sleazeball. Maybe there's more to him than meets the eye. And once again, I thought Jude Law played that also pretty ambiguously, and that just made his performance all the more captivating. Now, Channing Tatum is sort of out of his league. He's not in the movie that much. I think he's in it for like the first 40-45 minutes. And he's not especially good, but he's not really bad either. He really only seems there to make the people around him seem much better. So when Rooney Mara is having a scene with Channing Tatum, you're really looking at her because of how stiff he is. But at the same time, I guess it was a decent performance for him. I don't hate Channing Tatum like a lot of people do, but I think that he's not quite as good as he thinks he is. But that's just me. Honestly, I thought the weakest performance came from Catherine Zeta-Jones as Emily's former doctor. She's not horrible, but I felt that her character seemed overly smug, and I don't see that really working for a psychiatrist. And this is when you don't even know anything about her. From her very first scene, something about her you just don't like. And I don't see a psychiatrist really being successful if they aren't very likable or personable. And then at times she just felt like she was trying maybe a bit too hard. It's not a horrid performance, but compared to Jude Law and Rooney Mara, I thought she was maybe the weak link. Although I don't regret her casting for a few reasons. She still looks great, and I guess I consider myself a fan of her in general, but definitely not as good as Jude Law or Rooney Mara. So that's what I like. And then the direction is very minimalist. The guy who directed this, I believe, did like Ocean's 11 and then Contagion. And it's weird because usually there's a lot more to the staging, how scenes are staged in his directions. Like, there is some style, but it's not generally overbearing, although there was quite a bit of stuff in the Ocean's 11 movies. And I found it weird that this is supposed to be his last full-length feature film, at least according to him, and really all he's doing is staying out of the way of the actors. He's just letting them carry the movie. You won't even notice his direction for the most part. It's just so minimalist, and that was probably for the better, because once again, the most impressive aspect of this movie was the acting, so props to him for realizing that. I do sometimes think, even though I enjoy like real over-the-top and stylish directors, I do sometimes think that it goes to show how skilled they are when they know they should just step back and let the actors carry the movie for them. So that's that. Why did I not love this movie as much as I thought I did? Well, as I said, they kind of marketed it as some sort of erotic thriller. It's not. In fact, I almost wish it was, because this movie lacks an identity. It's not a lot of anything. I can't really pin down what genre this is trying to be. It's not erotica because there's only a few, like 3 sexy scenes total, and that's not enough to really be classified as that. And they really make it out based on the trailers to be like it was going to be about obsession. At some point, Emily starts obsessing over the doctor. Never happens, so I'm not even really sure why they tried with that. I can't call it a thriller either, because well, it's not thrilling. At no point do we feel the characters are in danger in terms of whether they're going to get killed or not. Worst case scenario, she's going to go to prison for the rest of her life, or he's going to lose his license. I mean, yeah, that would suck, but that's definitely not enough for me to just be on the edge of my seat just for that reason. Now, at least the actors were able to generate suspense when the story wasn't quite doing that, so I guess that makes up for part of it. The first 40 minutes, honestly, I was bored out of my mind. It is very, very slow-paced. It's making some weird social statement about society's dependency on medications. I thought that was handled pretty well, but once the murder happens, it's almost like they took all that and turned it into a relatively simple plot device. And really, I actually figured out where this movie was going long before it actually went there. And that's one of the things that I think is really strange, is at its core, this is a relatively conventional film. You've seen all these twists in other movies. Now, they muddy the waters with little divergences that you don't see very often, but for the most part, if you just look at it at its core, I've seen this film before. What else can I say? I can't really call it a drama because you don't know enough about the characters to really become emotionally attached to them. Once again, since they're really playing up the ambiguity, whether the doctor's a sleazeball or the wife is crazy and had killed him or had killed him without being on any sort of medication, that keeps you at an arm's length distance from these characters. You're not really sure whether or not you're supposed to feel bad for them because you don't really know entirely what they're going to do. So I didn't really feel that it totally succeeded on any level in terms of what it was trying to be, but at the same time, it was still interesting. I thought the dialogue was well written. Once it got going, I thought it flowed pretty nicely. The acting, once again, was spectacular, but once again, I can't say what kind of movie it is, so it's really difficult for me to recommend this. Usually when I review something, like if a movie is a slasher and it's succeeding as a slasher, I'd say, yeah, definitely go check it out if you like those kinds of movies, but I don't know what kind of movie this is. There's times where you think it's going to become a courtroom drama. Doesn't happen. It spends 5 minutes on that, or a medical procedural, except instead of the traditional doctors, it's a psychiatrist. But they don't spend too much time with that either. And then soon a mystery starts happening, but that's pretty late into the movie. That's like the third act. So it's difficult to say. Would I recommend it? Sure, if you think that this sounds like it could be good, but whether you want to wait till DVD or watch it in theaters, that's up to you. I can't really decide myself. I did not do a written review, but be sure to follow me on Twitter. I'll have updates on Critiquing the Critics, and there should be a quickie episode coming out soon, probably this week. I'm planning on Tuesday. Check out my website. I recently did a written review of Horror Express with Christopher Lee, and I'm working on one of John Carpenter's The Ward, his newest movie. So please check those out, and that's all I've got. So I'll see you guys later.